Hi guys. In this video I'm not going to teach anything new. I'm just going to work out all of the problems from worksheet 3 in case you struggled with any of them. So this is not a lesson. This is what you should look at after you've done your worksheet if you struggle with any of the problems. Okay, so the first question. N will equal negative b, which would be 9, plus or minus the square root of b squared, which is negative 9 squared, minus 4 times a times c, all over 2 times a. I didn't write down a, b, and c, but hopefully you know by now. A is the coefficient in front of the squared term. B is the coefficient in front of the linear term, which is to the first power, and C is the constant. Okay, now put everything underneath the radical goes into your calculator. So I'm going to bring down the 9 plus or minus the square root of, plug all of that stuff that's under the radical, all of this you can put into your calculator at one time. 81 minus 4 times 3 times negative 8. And I get 177, and then all over 6. And that's it, because the square root of 177 can't be broken down. So you're done with that one. Okay, number 2. A is negative 3, B is 4, and C is positive 11. So X will equal negative B plus or minus the square root of b squared is 4 squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a, and 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. Simplify. That's negative 4 plus or minus the square root of. Put all of this into your calculator. 16 minus 4 times negative 3 times 11, which is a positive 148, all over negative 6. Now that could be the answer, but I taught you on the last lesson that if you have a negative in the denominator, then they will change all of the signs for all 3 numbers. So I'm going to change everything, which really is the equivalent of multiplying by negative 1 over negative 1, and that's why it's legal. So I'm going to multiply everything by negative 1. That'll make the 4 a positive 4. This plus or minus, if I multiply by negative 1, it makes it a minus plus if you want to, but we always still just write plus or minus. And on the bottom, negative 6 will turn into a positive 6. So there you go. That's the answer to number 2. All right, number 3. By the way, I just noticed this. On this problem, can you see that 6 and 9, oops, let me go back. On this problem, 6 and 9 and 3 and 0 can all be divided by 3. So if you rewrote this problem by dividing everything by 3, and you rewrote it and solved it with 2m squared minus 3m plus 1, because you divided everything by 3, that is also going to give you the exact same answer, and it will be quicker and easier to solve. You guys probably didn't notice that, so I'm going to erase that and pretend I didn't notice it either. Okay, so A is going to equal 6, B is negative 9, and C is 3. So M equals negative B. If B is negative 9, then negative B is positive 9, plus or minus the square root of B squared. Negative 9 squared is a positive 81, minus 4 times A times C, all over 2 times a. So that's 9 plus or minus the square root of. Everything underneath the radical goes in my calculator. 81 minus 4 times 6 times 3 is 9, all over 12. Now the square root of 9 I can do. That's a nice neat number. The square root of 9 is 3. It comes out of the radical. So now I have 9 plus or minus 3 all over 12, which is going to give me two answers, one when I add 3 and one when I subtract. So 9 plus 3 would be 12 over 12, and 12 over 12 is the same as 1. 9 minus 3 would be 6 over 12, and 6 over 12 simplifies to 1 half. So those are my two answers. Okay, number 4. A equals 7, B is 5, and C is negative 13. So K equals negative B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4 times A times C all over 2 times A. Simplify under the radical. In my calculator all at one time. Put all of this into your calculator without the radical though. 25 minus 4 times 7 times negative 13. And I get 389 for all of that. All over 14. And I can't simplify the square root of 389, so that's the answer, just as is. Number 5. A is 2, B is negative 1, and C is 12. So x equals negative B plus or minus the square root of B squared, negative 1 times negative 1, minus 4 times A times C, all over 2 times A. Simplifying underneath the radical, 1 minus 4 times 2 times 12 gives me a negative number, and I can stop right now. As soon as you get a negative underneath the radical, then you just quit and say, no solution. Okay, last one. A equals, whoops, hold on, got a little lost, hit the wrong button again. Okay, last one. A equals negative 5. B equals 1 because there's no number in front of that n term. And C equals 11. So n equals negative B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4 times A times C all over 2 times A. Simplify under the radical. In my calculator, 1 minus 4 times negative 5 and times 11 is a total of 221 all over negative 10. And that could have been the answer. Lots of times it is. But again, remember, if there's a negative in the denominator, then they're probably going to change all of the signs. So the negative 1 turns into a positive 1. The negative 10 turns into a positive 10. And if I change a plus or minus, it's still a plus or minus. So that kind of stays the same. And there you go. That's your answer. Hope it's getting easier for you all. Good luck.